You're now listening to the Adiel Gorel Show. Each episode, I'll bring you the latest news from my discussions with top health and wellness experts so that you can bring yourself into better health. Today, on the Adiel Gorel Show.
The electronics in our lives can really be very detrimental to our energy and to our cell function. So never, for example, sleep with your cell phone next to you.
Hi everyone, we are very fortunate here today to have on this wonderful podcast with us Beth Greer. Beth Greer, aka the Supernatural Mom, is the author of the bestseller Supernatural Home, an environmental toxin expert and educator, award-winning journalist, stem cell activation advocate, and documentary film producer. She eliminated a sizable tumor in her chest without drugs or surgery by detoxing her body and home. She's the founder and the CEO of the True Vitality Project, offering strategies, insight, techniques, and proven method to radically transform your health and vitality. Her work is endorsed by Deepak Chopra, Dr. Joseph Mercola, and has been named a top 50 health and environmental journalist to follow. She is a former San Francisco Chronicle, Washington Times, and Huffington Post columnist, and former president of the Learning Annex, a nationally renowned adult education company for which, by the way, I was a speaker and I loved every second of that. She's a popular speaker, at industry expos, private firms, health clinics, nonprofits, and schools. She has presented at Google, LinkedIn, South by Southwest, the Real Truth About Health Conference, and the American Academy of Environmental Medicine Conference, and has been featured in and on CNN, NBC, NPR, Rodale Wellness, Martha Stewart Living, Health Magazine, Prevention Magazine, and on several health summits. We can learn so much from Beth, and I think what we're going to learn from her is very practical. And also, Beth was one of the experts that was on our PBS special, Life 201, and she put a wonderful chapter in the book Life 201 full of information that is life-changing. So Beth, welcome to the show. So Beth, if you can take us through the path that led you to the present. I mean, I know you've been through so many wonderful, if you can tell us and how you healed yourself and how that can help us heal, ourselves as well.
Sure. Well, let's see. I was running the Learning Annex, as you mentioned, and I didn't realize how stressed out I was. I was working nonstop. I took a 2-week vacation in the end of December where I would just sleep on a beach. Basically, we would go to Hawaii and I would just be knocked out. And then I remember it was just right after that Hawaii trip, I had a pain in my shoulder and I went to my chiropractor. And after 5 treatments, he said, you know what, it's not getting better. And I think you have a herniated disc and you should go get an MRI. And so the pain, to give you an idea of what it was like, I had this nerve pain running down my arm and my first 3 fingers were getting numb. So the MRI showed not a herniated disc, but I had a mass in my chest the size of a tennis ball. And I'm like, how could this happen to me? I really thought I was doing everything right because, even though I was stressed out and not really focused on that aspect, I thought I was eating well. I exercised. I even had a meditation practice where I'd bring people into my office every day at 4 and we do 20 minutes of TM meditation. And so it just came as a shock to me that I had a tumor and I had it biopsied, and thank goodness it was not cancerous, but it was a large benign nerve root tumor, they called it, schwannoma tumor. And I went to 3 top surgeons in the Bay Area, and they all couldn't agree on how to access this thing. One wanted to cut me under my collarbone. The second one said, no, we're going to go in your armpit. And the third one said, no, 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 we're going to remove one of your ribs from the back to access it. And I just remember like thinking, this is insane. And I just thought, well, I, with all of the courses I've taken and all of the books I've read from all the experts at the Learning Annex, I thought, I got to just try to heal this myself. And so, as luck would have it, I had booked a week down at the Optimal Health Institute down in San Diego. So just for some R&R, but what I didn't realize was this is going to be the transformation for me at the beginning of it. So it was just raw food and basically green drinks for a week and doing colonics and also communing with our disease. So I noticed that just after 3 days of just drinking green drinks and just detoxing, that the pain started to go down a bit so that I didn't need a sleeping pill to knock me out at night. And so I thought, oh, it's interesting here. Maybe I'm onto something. And then, during a meditation, they asked us to speak to our disease. And so I asked, what are you doing here? What's your message? Why did you come into my body? And the word came back, simplify. And I realized I wasn't really leading a very simple life. And I wasn't really eating very simple food because I was eating out almost every day and microwaving my food as well, because I was in a hurry all the time. And so I just came home with that knowledge and started to really go into a profound, mode of simplification. So I decided to eat all 100% raw, which I don't do now, but it was a really good detox cleanse for me. And then I thought, well, what else can I simplify? And I remember putting some moisturizer on my skin, and I looked at the label on the back, and there was a paragraph worth of ingredients on there that I couldn't pronounce. And with my journalism background, I started researching, and I said, oh, okay, these chemicals are toxic. And when they're combined, no one is testing, sometimes they'll test 1 or 2 chemicals, but when there's 30 of them all combined in one thing, they're not testing that cocktail on us. And our skin is our largest organ, and these chemicals go in. So I switched out to all natural products, including baking soda as a deodorant, for example. And then I thought, okay, what else can I simplify? And I remember I was cleaning the countertops with Windex, and I looked at the back and it said precautionary statement, hazardous to humans and domestic animals. And I just thought, well, this can't be good. Just because you grow up with this stuff and it's on the store shelves, everyone thinks it's safe. But it's not, in my opinion. And so I switched out to all natural cleaners. And then I looked at, what was surrounding me in terms of my mattress, for example. And I realized, we're sleeping on toxins and chemicals and off gas. So I got a natural mattress. Anyway, it took about 6 months of this kind of persistent detoxifying of my body and my home, and the pain just was going down, down, down. I remember it was just around my 50th birthday, the pain disappeared. And then I waited a few more months and I had it scanned, and the tumor was gone. So it was a huge wake-up call for me that our bodies are self-healing if we just don't bombard them with everything that we're being surrounded with and putting in us, on us, and surrounding us. And so then I just took that opportunity and started writing, and I wrote a column for the San Francisco Chronicle called The Natural Home. And it was funny, after about 4 or 5 columns, they said to me, you can't do this anymore because we're getting so many letters from industry saying, who's Beth Greer? She's not a scientist. There's nothing wrong with mercury in your mascara. There's nothing wrong with plastics in your this and that. So I decided to turn it into a book. And so that's when I wrote Supernatural Home. That came out in 2009.
Actually, now that I think about it, I was lucky enough to be at the first reading at a beautiful bookstore in Corte Madera. I was there. I was so proud of you. It was beautiful.
That was my first public appearance. And I was so nervous and I was so out of my body, with fear. But I really come to embody the message, and I just, feel so much more relaxed now.
So, Beth, this is really fascinating and also gives us a lot of hope because obviously you got rid of an entire mass just by cleaning things, clearing things, and simplifying. So, let me ask you this: toxins come to us from so many sources. And I remember even when you were on Life 201, you talked about it. So, can you talk about the multiple sources that we get exposed, to toxins from?
Yeah. So in my book, I break it down into what goes in us, on us, and surrounds us. So first, the food that we're eating, just to be aware that if you're eating processed food, it contains a multitude of chemicals and additives and food dyes. All these have effects on us, particularly our mood. I just recently, I had some, I went to a friend's for dinner and she had these I think they were keto cookies, and so I start eating them. They're, oh, no sugar, and then I was like an idiot, like, oh, let me look at the label after I ate 5 of them, and then I saw that it contained, these artificial sweeteners that just did havoc on me because I felt sick that night, and it was just interesting because my friend who eats it all the time doesn't, because I think people become acclimated to it.
That's the thing. You felt sick because you keep clean usually. So when you put something that's not clean, you will feel it more. If I have it all the time, I won't feel it as much.
That's right. But I'm thinking if you eat it all the time, it's building up in your body. So you add that to if people are drinking tap water, for example, that's not been filtered, our tap water has a lot of chemicals in it. So I always recommend people get a water filter. Then what goes on us? So what we're putting on our skin every day, women with makeup, hair stuff, anything with fragrances is also kind of a big trigger for people. I've had clients, so I go into people's homes, at least I did before COVID, right? And they would have chronic headaches and they didn't know why. And I remember I went into this one woman's home and she had, she's the one with a chronic cough. And that was, I walked into her bedroom and she had about 20 scented candles. And, I could feel my throat just tickling me and closing up. And, I said, well, this is your problem. And she couldn't believe it. She said, I light these candles every night and they relax me. What she didn't realize was the fragrance in there was really giving her a bad headache. So I had her switch out to beeswax candles and her headaches went away. But the other thing in candles is that there could be a metal wick in there, and has lead. And I looked up at her ceiling, she had black soot up there. It was all from these lead wicks. So just things that, again, stuff that we're not aware of. We think they're on the store shelves, they're healthy and safe, but they can be problematic. And then the last thing is what surrounds us. So our cleaning products, if you can buy as natural as possible. And just because you see the word natural on the label, whether it's food or cleaners, doesn't mean that it is truly safe and non-toxic. Manufacturers use that word as a catchphrase. So you want to buy things that are truly natural. So, vinegar and water is a great cleaner. Bon-Ami is better than Comet, for example. So, in my book, I list all of the healthy products that people can find and on my website. So, and then electromagnetic fields is another huge one, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and impacting us more and more. So this mom called me. She said her son for the past 2 years has been waking up with headaches every morning. And I walked into her home. She cleaned with vinegar. There were no scents. They ate organic. It's just super pure. And but then when I walked into his bedroom, he had a giant air purifier next to his headboard. And I said, why do you have this here? And she said, well, he has grass allergies. And I thought the closer to his head, the better. But my meter showed a very high field coming off of this thing. So we just moved it 10 feet away. And the next morning she called me in tears and she said, yeah, this is the first morning in 2 years that he didn't wake up with a headache, and he has not since. So it's pretty amazing. The electronics in our lives can really be very detrimental to our energy and to our cell function. So never, for example, sleep with your cell phone next to you, turned on. If you want to have it, put it in airplane mode. Or some people say to me, well, I might get a phone call in the middle of the night. So I said, well, put it in your bathroom. You could still hear it, and you could still use it as an alarm clock, but it's just not right next to you.
Well, if you sleep with it next to your head, you are likely to get a phone call from your doctor. Right.
There you go, Adi.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So, such simple things. I mean, it's so striking that you move, the air purifier 10 feet away makes all the difference in the world. You change little things. It seems like almost, I hear you and I kind of wish for you to be at my home even for 5 minutes, because you'll probably say this, and this.
Well, I have to tell you what I started doing since COVID. I've been doing these Zoom calls, and people will take their phones and we'll walk around. And so one woman who lives in Connecticut, so I'm out in California, I did this with her, and it turns out her alarm system in her home was on and her ears were ringing. So when I had her turn it on, everything changed. It was the simplest thing. She hadn't even thought about that. So,
So, I mean, let's go back. You said what we put in us, what we put on us, and what surrounds us. So back to what we put in us. I know there are some distinctions. So for those of us that are not vegan or vegetarian, is just grass-fed beef or free-range chicken enough, or is there more of a nuance on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I discovered there is more of a nuance, because I go to Whole Foods and it'll say grass-fed. So then I just decided to ask, the butcher, so when this says grass-fed, is it 100% grass-fed? He said, oh, no. It's not. And what I discovered was I had been visiting some ranches and, cattle ranches up in Oregon. And I spoke to, these are grass-fed, pasture-raised cattle ranchers. And they told me that by law, a meat manufacturer could put on the label grass-fed if the calves were raised on grass. And then as soon as they got to a certain age, they were taken off and given hay or, corn, soy. It still can be called grass-fed. So that was really kind of an eye-opener for me. So what you want to look for is pasture-raised, 100% pasture-raised or 100% grass-fed. And you can find that. I know Costco sells it. It's not that expensive to look for, but you just really start to look at the distinctions, because manufacturers love to do this it goes across the board. So the word made with. So if you're looking for, let's say whole wheat bread and it says made with whole wheat, it could mean 1% whole wheat. If you're looking for something that's made with essential oil, it could mean 1 drop of essential oil. So you want to look for 100%, and the same with the grass fed, and the same with pasture-raised chickens.
So you said grass-fed 100%. What about the term, or is it an older term by now? Grass-fed, grass-finished.
Grass-finished is not an older term. That's what you want. You can't always find it, even at the farmers market. There's they call themselves grass-fed, and then I asked, "Are you grass-finished?" And he said, "No. Our customers prefer." Because they sweeten it up, they feed them corn at the end.
Oh my God, that defeats the whole purpose.
Right? And so it defeats the purpose, and it sweetens up the meat so that it tastes better. So yeah, it tastes better, but what's the health impact of that? And what kind of corn are they feeding it? If most corn in the US, corn and soy, I'd say 95%, if it's not organic, is GMO. So it's got genetically modified organisms.
Yes. So, I mean, once again, let's say we go to a good store, like maybe, to Whole Foods, we go to the butcher, area. We want to ask for grass-fed, grass-finished beef and 100% pasture-raised chicken. Free range is not good enough, right?
It's not, and I'm going to tell you, I don't think you're going to find pasture-raised chicken at Whole Foods. You might in certain stores, but I haven't seen it very often. I've seen 100% grass-fed beef at Whole Foods. That you can definitely find there. The only place I've found pastured chickens is at the farmer's market.
Uh-huh. Very interesting. Really, really quite interesting. So now,
And I just want eggs too. So, it'll say vegetarian fed eggs, for example. So what does that mean? Organic vegetarian fed. I want chickens that are eating grass and grubs and all that stuff. I don't want them being fed soy and corn, which is considered vegetarian feed. So you want to find pastured eggs, and that you can find at Whole Foods too.
pastured eggs.
Yeah.
This is
not pasteurized, but pastured.
Yeah. Pasture, of course, of course. So this is extremely helpful since we are still on the topic of food, beyond, of course, beef and chicken. Can you give, I know we don't have the scope, but can you give a little bit about food in general and some of the key things, to focus on?
When you say food in general, what do you mean?
When we eat, so far we talked about beef and chicken. Some of our viewers are vegetarians, vegans. Just more generally, what are some salient key tips that we can get about food in general?
Okay, in general, you want to eat real food. So if you're vegan and vegetarian, you want to eat organic, preferably, heirloom if you can find. Like they have beautiful heirloom tomatoes and food that is not just mass produced, like those carrots, for example, that are, those little, they look like little nubs, that they've been processed a lot. You just want to get stuff that's come out of the ground. And it's just to get back to, the way your grandmother or great grandmother ate is kind of the message, to eat simply and try to avoid processed food as much as possible, even if it's organic, because they're putting in all kinds of additives and they're processing it. And so your bodies want the real thing, So if you can grow a garden, I have a garden and it's just been fantastic with organic soil, and I have a worm bin, and not that hard to do. And also herbs, I grow parsley and cilantro and chives, and add that in. You want things that are alive, as close to being alive as possible. So if you're buying carrots, you want to buy the ones that were recently picked with maybe a rubber band around them that still have their green sprouts. You don't want to buy them in a plastic bag. So that's kind of the message.
What do you feel about gluten for people who are not celiacs? Is gluten still something that we should minimize or avoid?
From what I've read in my research, yes. So, some people say, well, I feel nothing. It's also the way it's been processed and the way it's been grown. I know that the wheat in Europe is different. And so some people, don't have a hard time with that. So if you buy heirloom wheat or I forgot the name, there's another name for heritage.
Yeah, Harry. So, people say, okay, so I'm not, but sourdough bread is good. Is that true?
Some people say yes, some people,
Okay.
as long as it's organic. If you're not having digestive issues, then you're probably good to go. If you have problems with your digestion, I recommend people do an elimination diet and then bring back things slowly. So I'll do cleanses with people where we get rid of wheat, dairy, soy, alcohol, like that, sugar, and then for say 10 days. And then on the first day, have a little bit of dairy and you just see, how are you reacting? Are you sneezing? Is your nose watering? And then stop that, then bring in wheat and just see are you getting gas? Does your stomach hurt? So like that. And then your body will tell you, your body's intelligent. We need to listen to our bodies.
And again, you said something before that I think is generally useful. Just because you see a label saying these are gluten-free, tortillas, let's say, you don't just grab it. You kind of want to read what's on it and what's in it. Okay, so this is great, Beth. Very useful, very simple, and very, very powerful. So let's talk about what we put on our skin. A lot of people do put quite a bit of stuff on their skin. Some people feel naked, without makeup. That's important because the skin is very porous. So if you can get into that a little bit.
Well, I think the two big areas for the skin are deodorant, because almost everybody wears that. So I remember I took a client shopping, and he said he wants a stick deodorant and he uses Tom's. And I looked at the label, and the number 2 ingredient on there was propylene glycol, which is found, guess where? In antifreeze. Okay, do you really want to have that chemical going under your armpits? So anyway, we found
That's
one.
tough, and that was Tom's, which is,
That's right.
Yeah.
Now Tom's was bought by a big conglomerate. I think Clorox or one of the big companies. So they're not the way they used to be. The same with Burt's Bees. But so you have to read the labels. Some of Tom's things are excellent. Some of their toothpastes are great. They don't contain fluoride, for example, which can be a problem, or sodium lauryl sulfate, which can be a problem. So some of Tom's products are great. Some of Burt's Bees products are great, and some of them are not. So you just have to be kind of a good label reader about that. So yeah, for deodorant for myself, and I've been doing it for the past, 15 years, I get a salt shaker. I put in baking soda, and then I sprinkle it here and go like this, and good to go the whole day. It doesn't
the whole day.
And I have a client who's a Bikram yoga teacher, and she was very concerned because I told her to try it, because she kept reapplying her deodorant throughout the day. And I said, just try it. And she said, it works. It doesn't stop the wetness, but it stops the odor. Just like you put it in your refrigerator, it absorbs odor. It's the same thing.
Very nice to know and very good to know. What about makeup products? What about the stuff that so many people put on their faces every day, pretty much all day?
Right. You want to find a natural company, a natural makeup company, and a lot of the products at the Whole Foods are pretty clean. But I have on my website, I list the good ones, and in my book. So not that hard to find if you Google healthy makeup. Or there's also a website called Environmental Working Group, and they have a database on makeups.
Actually, I'm gonna take a little side. I know that at the very end we'll tell our viewers how to reach you and how to benefit. But I think this is an important point. Please tell us the website that you have where you list all of those things, and the book where there's a list, because I think it's a good thing to know now too.
Right. So in my book, Supernatural Home, I have a whole list of healthy products to use. And also there's a website called Environmental Working Group, ewg.org. And they have it's a database of where you can put in the products that you're using, and then you can see how it's ranked. You want it to be in the green or yellow. You don't want to be in the orange or red zone. So it's pretty useful. So something that you think is questionable, whatever, you can find out on their website.
Okay, so that's really good. But there are things that people can use for people who use makeup. You can find makeup that's alternative and it works well. I mean, I can see that you're wearing lipstick right now. I assume it's not toxic. It has all the right. So, I'd like people to find out about that. So that's very useful. Thank you so much. So now you talked about the scented products, and you say when something has a scent, it in many cases is an indication that there are chemicals at play which may not be very beneficial. Many things we use in our daily life, soaps, shampoos, are scented. So as a general rule, should we just aim for non-scented at all?
Yes. So let me tell you, when you see the word fragrance on a label, the manufacturer can put up to 100, if not more, chemicals in that one fragrance. It's kind of mind blowing. I talk to scientists about it. I use 100 as because it seems like a lot. I've been told that it's way more than 100 chemicals. It can be thousands of chemicals. It's kind of crazy. And so then when you think about what you just mentioned, that it's in so many things, that it's in your shampoo, it's in your soap, it's in your deodorant, it's if you're wearing cologne or perfume, it's in your household cleaners. You are being bombarded with that literally thousands of chemicals. So yes, I always opt for a scent-free.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this interview. Thank you for joining us today. I know you love what's coming next in part 2. Be sure to click the subscribe button for more videos.